It's a rainy day, as if the sky is also gloomy as the Butler family is gathered around in a funeral home to bid the final goodbye to Mr. Butler. I see his wife, Mrs. Nina Butler, standing in a long laced black dress with her two daughters, Blake and Gabrielle, and her son, Samuel. The family gives everyone, entering a small bow, and as I enter, I softly whisper to them, "I'm sorry for your loss," to which the four family members nod. The place is filled up pretty quickly, from extended family members, friends, neighbors, and businessmen. Everyone is seated all around me. None of them really knew him, and yet here they are, at his funeral. I think to myself. The priest clears his throat and begins the procession. The children get up one by one, each giving a small speech in a monotonous tone and ending it with a sniffle. Finally, Nina gets up. The crowd sighs as they look at the newly widowed woman. She gives a long speech, giving us a glimpse of her life with Mr. Butler. She takes many pauses as she wipes her tears on a black handkerchief. A black handkerchief, I think to myself, that's not something you see every day. I see Mr. Philip Cornwall stand up and shut my eyes tightly, preparing myself for what is to begin. He takes a few strides to the podium and introduces himself. "I am Philip Cornwall. I am Mr. Benjamin Butler's lawyer. Benji was my good friend, and one of his last wishes was that his will be read at his funeral, with everyone close to him to be a part of it. I, Benjamin Butler, a resident of Duval, Seattle, being of sound and disposing mind, I leave all my possessions to Miss Catherine Midget." The crowd goes into complete silence. In one of the front seats, Mrs. Nina Butler's chair suddenly falls to the ground as she faints. Her children hurry around her, trying to wake her up. The crowd stares back and forth between the lawyer and Mrs. Nina as they whisper among themselves. The priest comes forward towards the podium as Mr. Phillips steps down. You may all come forward and leave your flowers in the casket." It's long after everyone has left when I come forward with a lone sunflower and some seeds. I placed the sunflower on the soft mud that had covered him and dug a little to place the seeds. Everyone else left him roses in his casket, but I know how much he loved sunflowers. They are difficult to find in the rainy city of Seattle, but we all knew he was about to die, so I had to arrange some. In his last days, Benjamin Butler had asked me to place sunflower seeds on his grave. When I told him that they would never grow, he had replied he would never be able to know that from inside the grave, so he would imagine them flirting with the wind, swaying back and forth on his grave. Mr. Philip was standing outside the gate in his car when I walked out. I got into his car and he whispered, "Ready?" I heaved a sigh and the car engine roared as we made our way to Benjamin's house. Philip got done and helped me down. He was an old chivalrous man. As he rang the bell, I stood behind him. Mr. Butler's son Samuel arrives at the door to open it. He greets Mr. Philip uncomfortably as he steps aside to let us in. Mr. Philip and, Miss Catherine Midget." Samuel stares at me dumbfounded as I walk in quietly. When we reach the living room, we see the family gathered around on the plush couches that are perhaps no longer theirs. Nina looks at me and huffs a profanity under her breath and then stands up. "You!" I give her a tight-lipped smile. "Good afternoon, Nina. How pleasant to make your acquaintance again." The children stare at us in horror. "Again?" "Oh, it seems like you never told your children about your high school best friend, Nina. How upsetting. I had thought we would grow old together." "I don't understand. Why are you here? When did you meet Benjamin again? Why did he have your name instead of mine in his will?" I sat down on the couch and put my feet up on the coffee table as the family stared at me menacingly. "What do you think you are doing?" Samuel came towards and pushed my feet down. "Oh, it's my house, Samuel. Let's be gentle to the owner." I gave Samuel a smile and put up my feet again. He didn't say anything this time. Nina rushed to Mr. Phillip's side and took his hands in her own. Mr. Phillip, this must be a mistake. Benjamin was your close friend. Don't you want to help his family? I... Mr. Phillip retreated his hands from Nina and folded them behind him. Miss Nina, Mr. Butler made his will while he was alive, and in my presence. Nothing can be changed. It is the law. But I don't understand. Oh, allow me. I began to tell her everything that had happened. Benjamin, I, and Nina were in the same school while we were growing up. Benjamin and I fell in love when we were both 16, and we started dating. At the time, we were all innocent. The world's customs and prejudices were unknown to us. After our school farewell, Benjamin and I kept dating, but unfortunately, we had to enter into a long-distance relationship as he shifted to California for his college education, while I stayed in Seattle. Nina also went to California, and although she promised to keep in touch, she began to maintain her distance, and I just assumed that she was busy in her new life. One day out of the blue, Benjamin suddenly stopped responding to me. I called him, texted him, even sent him emails and letters, but to no avail. I was heartbroken, and I thought perhaps he wanted to move on. Unfortunately, I was never able to love a man as much as I loved Benjamin, so I remained unmarried. I never had any contact with Benjamin until recently, and that's when I truly discovered what had happened. It was late evening when I was tending to my garden when my phone rang. Catherine. Benjamin coughed. It's me. Benjamin? Catherine, even in this pain, I cannot forget you. What? I don't understand. I replied to him. I'm dying, Kath. He coughed again. I would like to see you, if only for the last time. He told me he had shifted back home to Seattle as he wanted to die where he was born, and he was admitted at the New Hastings Hospital. I rushed to the hospital at once. When I met him, Benjamin expressed his hurt, and that's when we found out. While at California, Nina's parents wanted her to marry Benjamin, and she was too impressed by his intellect. Benjamin was already rich, and it was only obvious that a young man like him would only prosper. Nina knew that Benjamin was in love with me, and so she knew that she would have to break that bond in order to form a new one. She hired a man to take pictures of me and one of my friends at college. Then she got the pictures edited professionally by an editor. They looked so real that Benjamin had believed them instantly. He was so angry and heartbroken that he immediately broke all contact with me. We cried bitterly over our loss of the past. Benjamin was furious, but I asked him to keep his calm, as he needed to think of his kids and they wouldn't want to know such harsh things about their mother, especially when their father was passing away. Benjamin protested that his children didn't really care for him. They hadn't even visited him since he had been admitted here, but I eventually convinced him what had passed had already happened, and I didn't want to be a home wrecker of a woman who was about to be widowed. This was until Benjamin had a blood test. The blood test was just to check his drug trials, but it also revealed that it was impossible for him to have kids, not just now, but even in the past. We were taken aback by the results and got more accurate tests done to confirm. We were taken aback, but we couldn't mistrust science. Benjamin immediately hired a private detective and found out that his wife had been secretly meeting a man, her old professor, at least once a week in small hotels outside town. This wasn't enough, though, so he called his family to the hospital under pretext that he needed a lot of blood and all his children would have to donate blood in order to meet the requirement. Unknown to the true intention, the children agreed easily. Benjamin paid the hospital to run DNA tests for all his children. He found out that they were all siblings, but none of them had DNA that matched his. They were not his children. As soon as I was done, Samuel threw his fist at the coffee table. We all are glad we aren't his kids. He would have been an awful father. The whole room was silent as Samuel paced up around the living room. Come on, Mom, let's go. I'm sure Dad will take us in as soon as he finds out what has happened. That old jerk? He has been living on pennies I've thrown to him. What? Nina's daughters said in unison. Oh, what did you think? That I was in love with him? Benjamin wouldn't even touch me. He was bewitched by her. I had my needs and I knew that. To tie him down to me, I needed him to believe me that he had kids with me. So I drugged him every time I was pregnant, and he believed that he had slept with me. When he woke up, as he had no memory of the night anyway, I had all three of you idiots, just so I could have all this. She looked around the house in awe. You were all useless, good for nothing. Oh, that's good to know, Nina. A well-dressed man who was at the door said, Dad, I loved you all these years. I bore the fact that my children had another man's name, and you were another man's wife all these years. He shrieked. Nina looked at him as if she was disgusted. Oh, don't humor yourself. I worked so hard when I found out Benjamin was dying. I started working for my PhD and did double shifts at the university. I thought we would finally live together, as we should have. But alas, I have gotten my PhD and grant for my research. They even allotted me accommodation. It's not as grand as this palace, but my kids will have a roof as long as I'm here. I will be taking them with me. As for you, you can drown in a drain, and the Seattle rain shall pour on you mercilessly on the streets. Actually, Benjamin did leave the children 5% of his shares for the company, Mr. Phillips said, as he interfered in the family drama. Suddenly all the attention was on him. He wanted to give the children the benefit of the doubt and said that if they can work hard and make it count, it can be very profitable for them. Nina looked at Samuel with a lot of love suddenly. Oh, of course they will, won't you, honey? I most definitely shall, along with my sister and my father. As for you, I don't believe we ever had a mother. Samuel raised his eyebrow at his sisters as they nodded in an affirmative. As the children left with the professor, Nina rushed to me and begged for mercy. However, Mr. Phillip ordered her to leave at once unless she wanted legal consequences. She gave up and walked out of the house with her things, pulling her bags behind her. I lived in the house for a few days just to honor Benjamin. Eventually, I decided to donate the house to an orphanage so they could open a branch on the land. I sold my shares as well and donated them towards research on cancer. Nina? Well, the last time we saw her, she was on the streets alone in the downpour. Some old-age asylum finally had some sympathy for her and took her with them. She's probably still living there. Before going back to my own life, I went to the funeral home to see Benjamin for one last time. I was surprised when I saw a small plant on top of the grave. It was like he was giving me a signal that he was content.